Hey all, it's Zenial Gamer, and we are back with another video. That back there is, by the way, Shaquila and Brownie. I am hoping to figure out how to block out the background screen sometime in the next couple of videos, but for today, we're joined by Shaquila and Brownie. I can't make them move, they're too cute. Anyway, today's video we're going to be spotlighting Naomi, the 2A Marshall Cat. You can see her runes up on screen. She's got a very relatively low rune requirement, just like the other 2A Marshall Cats, because she's got the ability to max out to 100% crit rate with a passive. In her case, she gets 100% crit rate if the enemy has harmful effects, and that makes her a little bit more of a PvE monster than the other 2A Marshall Cats, which is why I think she hasn't gotten quite as much attention. Um, she is actually pretty good in PvP. I encountered her a couple of times in Special League and actually did have quite a bit of difficulty with her. Even in G2, G3 players were using her, and she can be pretty strong, but she requires a different kind of comp because you need to be able to first strip and then add negative effects to benefit from that 100% crit rate. So I made Naomi as my second 2A, actually. Joltan was my first, largely because I already had him built and used him regularly. And then I went straight for Naomi because I thought she had a lot of potential for GB10 and also for the Water Rift Beast, which I'll show a little bit later in this video. So when I first made Naomi, I started running her in GB10 to replace Crow. I actually tried working her. First, I tried to replace one of my Lins, and that wound up being a lot slower, so then I tried to replace Crow. Neither of those comps I found to be really better than what I was doing before. I had been running for the most part. My floor was about 20-21 seconds, and with Naomi, my floor is about 22 seconds. So I stuck her in storage, and I didn't use her for a few weeks. And then I went through a stretch where I was farming GB10 very heavily. And I found that when you're using Crow and two Lins, because they're all fairly squishy, every now and then you run into an issue where one or more of them will die with a derp on the mid boss, and you wind up popping out like a 50-55 second run. Now, I know there are obviously the Julie teams out there that are going to be much faster and more consistent, but the rune requirement for them is astronomical. You can run twin teams as well, but again, you have to be putting some of your best runes on your PvE monsters, which what I was trying to accomplish was to create fast runs without having to give up my best runes. As a matter of fact, on the last FRR, I moved a lot of good runes away from my farming monsters, and so my team slowed down accordingly. So I brought Naomi out of storage and I started testing her out again. And the biggest advantage I found from her is that even though she tends to be a couple of seconds slower than using Crow, for example, because her damage is not as good, what she created for me was a lot of consistency. I almost never have runs that go above about 35 seconds, and oftentimes I will have long stretches of runs that are in the 22 to 24 second range. That's mainly because of the attribute advantage that she's getting, where she's just not taking the same level of damage that, a Crow or that the Lins are taking. And because I've put her on Violent, it gives me that opportunity to cycle back to that S2 a little bit more often. She would, of course, do a lot more damage on Rage or Fatal, but because I'm using her so much in PvP autoing, I wanted to give her the opportunity to get back to her S2 as often as possible. So you can see we've done a few runs on Giants here. I'm thinking this one's going to be in the 32-second range, 34-second range. She will get down as low as somewhere around 21, 22 seconds in this particular team. And again, she's on Violent. She's not doing maximum damage. She's definitely not using my best rune set. But she is creating a lot of consistency for me. I'm not having those 50-second runs pop out anymore. This team never fails. The attribute advantage plays a huge role in that. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at Naomi in the Water Beast. Again, she wasn't anything entirely game-changing or mind-blowing here. I was previously using Eileen, which is the 2A Wind Pixie, I believe. No, Wind Pixie Shannon. Wind Fairy, excuse me, the 2A Wind Fairy. Eileen also has damage that scales based off of negative effects, and she has that on her S1. So my Eileen is in a Fatal set, and she does about 200k per hit, but on her S1. So I thought Naomi was going to be a distinct upgrade here. Obviously, Wind Homunculus would be better than either of them, but I do prefer to keep the Water Homunculus, both for farming and for TOA purposes. So without being able to use the Wind Homunculus and looking for a damage scaling wind-based monster, Naomi seemed like she was going to be a perfect fit. Now Water Rift has been the toughest one for me, definitely my lowest score. And so I thought Naomi was going to give me a big jump. She didn't, but she gave me a little jump. I went from that 7.9 top score to about 8.1. And again, she's going to be very consistent. I'm able to frontline with her even using relatively mediocre runes because of the attribute advantage. She will usually die here. She'll probably die on the second boss hit. First he'll do his freezing roar, and then when he does his thorn vine, she'll die. But it won't matter. The boss will be low enough by then, so the team never actually fails. It's very consistent in the 7 to 7.5 range, with that occasional getting up around 8 million. So I've tried different combinations. I've tried using Eileen. I tried using Gang Chun, the water beast hunter, I think he is. Because he also has damage that scales. But being a 3-star, his base attack and his multipliers were just too low, and the damage was a little underwhelming. So that's one of the big advantages that Naomi is going to give you here, is being 2A, she's got a higher base attack. And then I just want to emphasize again that I'm doing this really without using my best runes at all. I haven't tested her on Rage yet or Fatal. And you might notice that I use Mav in this team right here. So Mav, what he does, he's amazing for all the rifts. I even use him in Fire Rift. What he does is, by reducing the cooldown, pretty straightforward, he reduces the cooldown and gets you to your big damage attacks more quickly. But because he's doing it on 5 other monsters, it really amplifies the effect. And then because you're working with all damage scaling monsters, the first time they use their big hits, they're really not doing nearly as much damage because you haven't put all the negative effects on the boss yet. And so he's cycling them back to their skill 2 or their skill 3, depending on which is the big hit, much faster. And you're going to wind up getting one more hit at the end with each of them that is their full maximum damage. So for example, Crow is doing almost 1 million on Light Beast, and Mav is going to give me at least one extra hit with Crow at that 1 million mark when I'm running the Light Beast. Now, I mention that because he's not as big of a deal with Naomi, and that's one of the reasons that my Water Rift score is not quite as high. Her S2 is only a 3 cooldown, and she's already on Violent, so she's already cycling back to it frequently. But the biggest thing is that she does 400k with her S2, with the runes I have, and she does about 200k with her S1 with the runes I have. So it's not that big difference in damage that you get where Crow is jumping from 150, 200k to 1 million by getting in that extra hit. And so in this particular team comp, the value of Mav is reduced, which is why I'm not getting quite the high scores that I'm getting elsewhere. But without Mav, Talia and Crow, also on this team, are not getting back to their big hits, and they're the real damage drivers against the Rift Beast here. And so the dynamic, the way they're all working together, what it means is that Mav is a big deal for the biggest damage dealers on my team. He's a smaller deal for Naomi, and so it's not allowing Naomi to shine as much as you might have hoped. Okay, so now we're going to try and test Naomi in a couple of PvP fights. Keep in mind, because I have her speed tuned for my GB10 team, she's going to be really slow. So it was pretty difficult to find an arena comp that I could try and run her against. But we do just want to see what kind of damage she actually can do in PvP. So we are probably in trouble, it looks like right now, because I wasn't able to outspeed that Triton. We know Sierra is going to bomb my Bastet, but let's see what happens. Yeah, I think Naomi is dead. All right. Let's go ahead and end that, and we'll try another one. Okay, take 2. We're trying again to see if we can just keep Naomi alive to get a test on how much damage she can do. So although this team does have a couple of fire dealers, fire monsters, Tetra should really manage the damage from Rika, and we should have an opportunity to see what Naomi can do. Since none of them have will, we'll just try and do a skill reset. And what we're waiting for right now is for Bastet to get an opportunity to do that. See if we can get some defense break. We can. I feel like these monsters may not have any runes on them at all. because that Chai Wu is basically just soloed by Bastet. But this should give us an opportunity to see what kind of damage our Naomi can do. And so let's see. Here we go. Defense broken, attack buffed, and 47k. Not bad. So if Naomi was faster, obviously if I was in a comp that was more built for PvP, that would easily have one shot pretty much anything short of like a Ritesh or a Molong, or anything that's just incredibly tankily built. So the PvP damage, as I mentioned, I fought her in Special League several times, and she can be very effective in PvP as well. It's just that she requires more setup, where Amina can just pop out and automatically one-shot nuke you, and Miho obviously has that ability to just live forever and revenge. Naomi requires a little bit more work. You have to speed tune her into your team properly. You have to set her up so that she's attacking something with negative effects on it. But once you've done that, once you've met the conditions, she's going to be doing really heavy damage. If you put her in a Rage or a Fatal build with better runes than I have on her, she'd probably be hitting for over 60k, and she could one-shot anything in the game. So I hope you find this helpful. The final verdict for me on Naomi is that she's not exciting, she's not special, she's not meta-changing the way Amina or a Miho is. But she is an extremely useful monster. She's got nearly, like most of the 2As, she's got nearly Nat 5 stats, and she's easily obtainable, and she's very effective. So I'd recommend building her. I just wouldn't recommend building her first among your 2As. Hey guys, if you enjoyed the video, please pop that subscribe button over on the left. It shows me that you enjoyed the video, but more importantly, it shows me that you found the information useful and hopefully it helped you in your gameplay. So here's the deal. You pop subscribe and I'll keep popping out content. Thanks, guys.